In order to do uploads to Google Cloud Storage, we need to do some setup in the Google Cloud. The first step consists in creating a Google Cloud project. This is a README file of our GCS file storage repository where my PyFar web app is. So you need to create a Google Cloud project and you need to configure billing. There is a free quota for use of the storage, but you need to create billing to be able to use it. Okay, so in case you exceed the quota, they can bill you. But for small use, you will not be paying anything. So after that, you need to create a storage bucket. To do so, you need to go essentially in the Cloud Console at console.cloud.google.com. You need to go to Cloud Storage and then Browser, and then you need to hit Create Bucket. Okay, I have already created my bucket. It will be called the Luca Teaching Uploads for this series of videos. And once you do that, you refer to the instructions again. You need to create a service account. You do that by clicking on IAM and admin, and then service accounts. Okay, so that's where it is. You need to create a service account. You give it a name, and you need to download the JSON credentials to your particular service account. Those are quite important. You put them in private gcskeys.json. You can see it. I can show you where I put them. Okay, so there is a private directory with a gcskeys.json in it. Okay, that contains the keys. That directory has to be into the gitignore, and it is there. In fact, it's very important. Private is in the gitignore, because you do not want these GCS keys to end up in your project repository. Obviously, it's a secret information because it gives access to Google Cloud Storage. So after you do that, you need to set up the permissions. So you do these in this way. You go again to Google Cloud Storage. Okay, so you are back here essentially. For Luca Teaching Uploads, you click on the configuration. You click on Edit Bucket Permissions. Okay, and here you have to make sure. So you see you can add permissions. To add permissions, you need to click on Add Member. And then you need to type in the service account email, the long email here, and you need to select a role. Okay, I have already added the role. And so you need to make a storage object admin of this image uploader account I created. You see, I created this service account. I called it image-uploader at Luca Teaching IAM, etc. The part after the @ sign is decided by Google. Image uploader is the nickname I gave to my service account. You need to make it storage object admin so that the service account will be able to create, delete, manage objects into your bucket. Okay? A service account is like a butler that does the job in your place. So instead of using your main account, that would be my Gmail account or my UCSC Google account or whatever account I chose, I create a service account to which I can give limited permissions. You know, my Gmail account can do a lot of stuff, can also access my Google Drive, my Google Photos, my whatever. You know, I don't like to use that to develop code. I create a service account that is like a version of me that has more limited permissions in Google Cloud. And so the permission I give it is storage object admin. Okay? There is also some older permissions, but those are not the ones that are in use here. Good. So once this is done, you go back to the instructions, and there is a fairly obscure thing to do. So you need to set up a bucket for course, and I will tell you in a moment what it is. But in practice, what you have to do is the following. You have to install GSUtils if needed. So here is a link to the instructions. GSUtil is one of the utilities of the Google Cloud SDK. So you need to install software on your laptop in order to be able to give comments that affect the state of the Google Cloud, essentially. Once you do that, you need to give this command, gsutil course set, and this is a file name to a file I have given you for your bucket name. Okay, the bucket name for me is Luca Image Uploads, but for you it will be whatever you created. Bucket names are globally unique, so you need to invent your own bucket names. This file, documentation course JSON file JSON, I give it to you because, well, so it's easier for you, I guess. So it is here, and the file has this content. The file is used to configure something called course, and now I want to tell you what it is by switching back to our visualization of what happens between the server, GCS, and our browser. So what are cores? I will give you a full lecture on security on the web later, but cores are the following. So there is a server and there is our browser, and we obtained a page by asking the server. You know, that's what we have been doing so far. We talk to the server and we get a page delivered to us. At this point, our browser is going to initiate an AJAX call to Google Cloud Storage. This is essentially a call to a site that is not the origin of the page. This is an important fact, okay? So this site, GCS, is not the origin. And there is a policy on the web that same origin AJAX requests are always honored. Well, I mean, you can deny them on the server if you wish, but are normally honored. But non-same site requests, such as this one, are subject to what is called the course policy. The course policy means that GCS actually will not particularly care where the request comes from, because it could be forged and funny stuff can happen, okay? So the GCS has no real super idea. But GCS will get this request, will notice that it doesn't come from its own domain. It will contain, the browser will inject a header that says, oh, look, this is not an origin request. And Google Cloud Storage will reply with whatever it replies with, okay? So there is a normal reply. But also there will be a header that will say, well, it will say what? If we don't configure course, the header will say nothing. And the browser will say, hey, I just did on behalf of the page a request not to the origin of the page. The reply came back with a blank authorization header. I'm gonna throw away the reply. So this is very partial protection in the end, because you throw away the reply, but you know the processing has already happened. So you sort of stop the effect of the request after the request has hit Google Cloud Storage. But it's better than nothing, and I will show you why this is necessary in the context of web security in general. But in the case of what we want to do in our application, this is not what we want, right? Because we would talk to GCS, and instead of getting a reply, our browser will be notified, you know, GCS is sending you phishing. Well, it is said in slightly more polite terms, but it will tell us that the request has been rejected due to same origin violation. And you look at that and you say, what is that? So if we configure course with the content of the file I showed you, what happens is that the header, instead of being blank, it will essentially say that this is allowed, okay? And we will be able to see it. So it will be slightly more complicated, the reply, than simply allowed. But let's look at the reply once we look at the actual headers that transit. Essentially, if we have configured the GCS in such a way that is fine for course, this request, even though it comes from not the same origin, will carry this header that says it's okay, and then the browser will be able to accept the reply and use it. And so there will be this authorization step that is necessary, and that is what we configure with a JSUTIL. So this is the content of the file. If we want to look at it in more detail, it says essentially that these JavaScript initiated requests not to the same origin are gonna be authorized for get, put, post, options, and delete request. And the content type is access control at our origin. That's the header we need to set. So these are the headers. And the origin can be any origin. Okay, we could limit it to a more narrow origin, But I don't care so much, because you see, what really prevents in Google Cloud Storage unauthorized access is the fact that only signed URLs that are signed by our secret service account credentials will be able to carry out information. So in this context, I'm not particularly interested in limiting the set of hosts that can connect to Google Cloud Storage. Okay, the security is managed via the signed URL. So once we have taken care of CORS, there is a couple of more steps that we need to do. If we go back to the instructions, so we have followed this README file, but the other thing we need to do is to look at requirements.txt. Okay, these are requirements that we need to install. One of them is PyCrypto. This is a Python cryptography module. We will use it to produce signed URLs. And the other one is NQGCS. NQGCS is a package I wrote, actually. I'm a bit of a rebel, so I can show you a moment what it is. But this is an NQGCS, which is so called because it's not quite a GCS. So, you know, one of the things that I believe is that Google developers are absolutely great in their technical skill, but are not necessarily great in their love for simplicity, and they sometimes create fairly contrived APIs to their services. So one day I had to use Google Cloud Storage, and I looked at the documentation and I said something like, yeah. And so I came up with a NQGCS, which gives me a more natural interface to the cloud storage. Essentially, with my NQGCS, you can simply say upload when you want to upload a file, write if you want to write a string, read if you want to read it, you know. I mean, it seems obvious, but somehow it's not quite the way they thought it would work. And so I have this particularly simple module. It's available via pip, so you can just install it, okay? So this concludes the preparation steps, and now we can actually dive into the real code.